Alright, so this video is for my Reddit Secret Santa recipes recipient. I'm going to go through how to make fried rice. This isn't necessarily something that a lot of people are familiar with, so but it's something that you can do with leftovers, which is kind of awesome. So as you can see, I'm going to be using some leftover Chinese food rice, and I also had some rice that I cooked yesterday as well. The other things you're going to need is you're going to need some seasoned meat of some sort. If it's pre-cooked like this, that's fine. If it's raw bacon, raw Spam, you could use hot dogs, you could use pretty much anything. This is barbecued pork that I've cut up into small bits. You're also going to want about half of an onion, white or yellow is fine. A couple of eggs, beaten. And I like to put in a little bit of color, and it's also good because it adds some flavor and texture. I have frozen peas and frozen corn. You want to make sure you're using frozen and not canned, or you could use fresh if you have that. And then the final part that you're going to need is going to be just some thinly sliced scallions or green onions. You're going to want to use both the green and the white part. And then in addition to that, some specialty items would maybe be some soy sauce and some sesame oil. You're also going to use regular vegetable oil as well as salt and pepper. The way that this starts is you're going to put probably your heat in if you have a very large saute pan like this, it's great. If you have a wok, that's even better. If you just have one that's got a little bit of a lower wall, that's fine. It just means you can't cook as much at once. In this size, I can cook this probably about 2 cups of cooked rice. So I've got it set to a heat of about level 6, which is medium high, because you want to make sure that you can do this quickly. Make sure you get your mise en place and you've got everything chopped up and ready to go, because once it starts, it actually goes pretty fast. So you're going to go ahead, even if it's a nonstick pan, you're going to want to put about maybe a tablespoon of oil into the pan. Let that heat up. And so this is where it's going to be a couple of different things. You can either use pre-cooked meat like this leftover barbecue pork, and if you do that, you don't need to cook it in advance. If you're going to be using raw bacon or raw Spam, bologna, whatever, you're going to want to be cooking that first. So in this case, I'm using a pre-cooked item, so we're going to cook the onions first. And so you want to go ahead and just dump in, it's like I said, about a half of a medium-sized onion. This is to flavor the oil, kind of get it all tasting really good. I don't add garlic. I know that a lot of people do, and if garlic's your thing, you can. This is more of kind of a traditional Hawaiian style fried rice. So that's the ingredients I'm going with. And you just want to cook these onions until they're somewhat soft. So once those have gotten just a little bit of heat to them, a little bit soft, you don't want to overcook these because, you know, when onions get really, really soft, they start to get really sweet as well. So you want to make sure you've got these soft but not getting all the way to caramelized. You want to add your pre-cooked meat after the onions. Once again, if you're using raw meat, you're going to do that before the onions. And you just want to get that pre-cooked meat heated through. It's also going to add a little bit of flavor to the oil that's being left behind in the pan. All right. And so the traditional way that I generally do this is I'll actually just start adding things to the pan with everything still sitting in there. But, you know, it's also perfectly okay to take it a little slower and scoop out the meat and the onion that you have in the pan so that you don't have to rush so much when you're doing the eggs and adding the rice, etc. And you don't have to get the pan totally clean of material. It's all going to be mixed together eventually. So making sure you've got still a little bit of oil at the bottom there, you're going to go ahead and add your eggs. And here's where we start seasoning things. You're going to want to just add a little pinch of salt and a couple of cranks of pepper, just to make sure that the eggs have a little bit of flavor on their own. They don't have to be pretty, you're just basically scrambling them. And at this point, we're looking for a soft scramble because the eggs will continue to cook as you continue to fry the rest of the fried rice together. So that's looking good. And this is all going to get chopped up pretty small as you're sauteing it. So you're going to get that all taken care of. And from there, we're actually going to re-add the onions and meat and get that all incorporated with the egg. And so here's where we start getting into a little bit of technique. There's a lot of chopping up in the pan going on. So you'll see I use a pretty stiff spatula, and I'm just going through and making sure that the egg is small pieces. You want it about equal size to the meat and the onion that you're using. So once that's all in, you want to go ahead and spread that out around the edges of your pan. And from there, you're going to add your rice, and the rice doesn't need to be warmed up. You can use it straight out of the fridge. It just means it's going to take a little bit longer to warm through. If you want, you can microwave it for a couple of minutes beforehand and before you put it in the pan, and that'll soften it up a little bit as well. At this point, right after you put the rice into the pan, you're going to want to go ahead and salt that and put some pepper on it as well. Probably, I'm going to say maybe a teaspoon of salt, or a little bit less if you're trying to watch your sodium intake, and then several cranks of pepper. And once the rice is in there, you're going to go ahead and start using that stiff spatula once again and start chopping down into it, trying to cut it into smallish pieces, chunks of rice. And it's going to get broken down even further as you stir fry. So it'll be more like the consistency of like traditional Chinese food fried rice, or fried rice from a restaurant. You'll recognize it. So once you get the rice broken down a little bit, you're going to go ahead and you're going to start incorporating those eggs and the meat and onion in. And so once again, in addition to the chopping that I'm doing with the spatula to separate the rice, I'm also going to start with a fried rice technique. I don't know that it's actually anything exciting or strange, but if you've never made fried rice, you know, how do you make sure you're getting all the rice cooked and evenly coated with meat and oils and the seasonings and everything else? So what you're going to want to do is look at your pan as if it's a clock, and you want to make sure that you spread out the materials in it, so the rice, the eggs, the meat and onion, and spread it out so it's kind of an even layer. And then you're going to take your soy sauce. I'm going to say probably maybe 2 tablespoons to start. And then you're going to start at about 1 o'clock. Bring it in, flip it on, and then chop through. So 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And that way you're making sure everything gets a little bit of the soy sauce, etc. And then you're going to go starting from 11 o'clock, do it across that way, 9 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock. And by doing that, you're going to get a really nice, even kind of mix. And it's also going to help break down the rice chunks even smaller so that they separate more. And you're just going to make sure everything gets a little bit of soy sauce on it. You're going to add probably about, I would say for this amount, I'm going to say probably a teaspoon of sesame oil. Sesame oil is really strong, so you don't want to add too much. And then probably another, let's say, half tablespoon of soy sauce. And so now that this is pretty well mixed, pretty well seasoned, Now you're going to want to add your frozen vegetables. So once again, you're going to want to spread it out to an even layer on your bottom of your pan. You're going to take your frozen peas and carrots, or corn. You could also use frozen carrots. I just like it because it brings a little bit of color, a little bit of a change of texture. So once again, you're going to go ahead and do the clock face and incorporate those vegetables into your fried rice. And once you've got it to this point, you can try it, maybe taste a little bit of it, see if it's got enough seasoning for you. If you need to, you can add some more soy sauce. If you like the taste of the sesame oil, you can add a little more sesame oil. Once again, be careful with the sesame oil because it is a very strong flavor. I'm going to add just a little bit more of that, and then you're going to want to turn the heat off. And as you do your final turns to get that soy sauce incorporated, if you added any more, you're going to go ahead and spread it out. And take those green onions that you had cut up, pour those in, and once again, do the little clock face, turn and chop, and get those green onions incorporated into your fried rice evenly. So using the corn, using carrots and peas, it adds a nice color. Otherwise, your fried rice tends to just be brown. And you know, using the barbecued pork adds a nice little shot of red. If you were using carrots, it'd give you a bright little pop of orange. But using the peas and green onions also adds some green, which looks nice. And that is how you make Hawaiian style fried rice.